But one of the things that continues to cause intermittent volatility in our markets is, when will this rioting and looting and civil unrest end? And as other things seem to be coming into focus that I can tell, I think what we need to do is the government needs to take a little more forceful hand in getting these rioters in line in these blue cities and blue states. But, you know, a lot of people don't realize, because here in New York, they're just not prosecuting. In Chicago, they chose not to prosecute 2,500 felonies. So all these kids, they think they're just having, you know, a little fun in the park. It's like the New Age Woodstock. They're going to do some crazy stuff and nothing's going to happen. There could be some big sentences awaiting these folks when their time comes in the barrel. And to talk about that with us right now is John Banzhaf. John joins us often. He's almost always correct, and he's a nationally known public interest attorney, professor at George Washington University Law. John, apparently you think some of these rioters are going to get some stiff sentences, or they could.
Well, the problem is they've been charged with crimes with had stiff sentences in one or two cases in Salt Lake City, even life imprisonment. The problem is it'll probably never happen. The prosecutors are facing enormous pressures to probably drop the charges or to reduce them, let them plead guilty to something minor. And whatever the prosecutors are doing, the police are doing, the federal law enforcement people are doing, it ain't working. We had major riots last night in Portland. Chicago's Miracle Mile is now largely boarded up as a result of it. And to add insult to injury, there's a new suit filed. Some of the protesters in Seattle are now suing, arguing that they can't afford to buy helmets and tear gas masks and so on in order to participate in so-called peaceful protests. So they're suing over that. So I think it's time we turned it around, and if we can use the word on the air, sue the bastards.
I like it.
To do this. It's working.
I think you're right. Now, let me ask you this. A couple of weeks ago, you gave me some good advice, and you said, you know, sometimes you could use the First Amendment against these people, these municipalities. And here in New York, Mayor Bill de Blasio started painting Black Lives Matter on all the streets, one particularly in front of Trump Tower in Manhattan. And a friend of mine, he's an artist, he's an activist. We've done a bunch of things together to try to support the cops, and he went and painted a blue line down the median in the road in front of a precinct in New York, okay? And it was kind of a symbolic thing, but just, you know, to boost the blue, he called it. You know, he wanted to show support that people out there care about them. He got a cease and desist letter from de Blasio, and he got an order from the Department of Transportation to remove what he put on. And then it turns out de Blasio himself never got any permits to paint the streets in New York. We're in a conundrum here. What do we do?
Well, I don't think you want to go out and start painting the street. What a number of people have done, in some cases successfully, is to make a request, aka a demand, that if they're going to allow one group to put up one kind of message on city streets, then in fairness and under the First Amendment, they have to allow other groups, particularly with competing messages, something of the same privilege.
Well,
so don't go out and start painting streets yourself. Make demands, do it in a certified mail receipt request letter, and you may be surprised that at least one city, the city backed down and decided they wouldn't allow such street paintings anymore.
Well, here's the trick, and this might be, we might need a brilliant legal mind like yours. When you say, well, if they let one person do it, they let the other. When they do it, when there was a little investigation into it, de Blasio never sought any DOT permission or anything. He just did it arbitrarily as I'm the mayor, I'm the king. So the city is saying we didn't let him do it and we're not letting you do it. So is there a way we could bring an action that says, well, if he has to remove the blue line, then you have to remove the BLM?
I think that would be one of the remedies you could ask for in the court. Whether or not the mayor, in fact, had the lawful authority to permit it is kind of irrelevant. He did it. He speaks for the city. He has what we lawyers call apparent authority, and therefore it is governmental action.
So you think that the mayor has some kind of governmental power to arbitrarily paint the street without seeking permission, but other regular folk would have to seek permission?
No, even if the mayor does not have the authority, the city can still be sued because we treat the mayor as having the authority. And it's what we call apparent authority. Sometimes we call it power without authorization. So, for example, if I'm representing a client, there's a settlement offer, I have the power to accept that settlement offer without talking to him at all. But then in return, he can turn around and sue me because I didn't have the legal authority to do it. But more importantly, I think, than painting city streets is the idea that victims of these riots should begin using legal action, going after the perpetrators, because it has many, many advantages over an ordinary prosecution. Prosecutors are under enormous pressure to settle. They have to prove everything beyond a reasonable doubt. Very difficult. They may have to identify the particular guy. Who is it who threw that Molotov cocktail? But when a victim sues, particularly if it's a class action, you don't have those problems. You don't have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. You just prove by a mere preponderance of evidence. You identify one of the 10 or 20 or 50 guys who was marching over to burn down the courthouse. You can sue him or the 2 or 3 you identify. You don't have to show that he was the one who threw the cocktail. Most importantly, if you get 1 or 2 of them, say from the social media or arrest records, you can sue them for all the damages, even if it was caused by different people. That's what we call joint and several liability. Also, if you are bringing a suit as a private person, you probably have an attorney working on what we call a contingency fee. That means he's going to get a big share of whatever you win. And you may think, well, why should I give away my money? But the answer is he's going to work very, very hard to make sure that your interests are protected. Not a prosecutor, not some 9-to-5 kid who comes into the prosecutor's office and doesn't want to upset his win record. If your lawyer is going to get a third of everything you get, boy, he's going to work hard. We have a saying, never underestimate the tenacity of a lawyer on a contingency fee. So I say to all those people who have been victims, sue the bastards.
Well, look, I'm trying to figure out a way where we could have a meaningful impact on the dialogue, but I got to tell you, the attorneys that want to work on a contingency, a lot of them around here in New York are crackpots. They're more interested in the publicity they're going to get out of it than they are in the actual cause. And the guys who can really bring a thoughtful case that could have merits and stand up past a headline, they don't really want to work on a contingency. So, and it's hard, it's hard to underwrite these public interest lawsuits.
Well, you're exactly right on that. But if the guy's going to get paid in publicity rather than money, more power to him, more money to the plaintiff. Yeah, it's difficult to find such a person, but particularly if you talk about a class action on behalf of all of the stores, for example, which were burned or injured or looted or desecrated and so on in a riot, you're talking about potentially tens of millions of dollars. And that should be enough to attract many very, very good lawyers. And I've worked with some situations where lawyers who you wouldn't think would be able to win a case have beaten all the odds and taken on a case. So I'd rather see more of these cases. Some will be won, some will be lost. But remember, the minute you sue one of these rioters, he's got to hire an attorney. He's got to file a defense. He may have a lien placed against his assets. It may affect his credit rating. And so all of these things could be a powerful defense. I'm not saying it's a silver bullet. Not saying it's going to solve the problem, but everything else, as you know, just hasn't worked. This would be a new string in our bow. This would be a new and important weapon, and people are beginning to do it. A journalist is sued. Somebody else who's injured is sued. The New York Detectives Association says they're going to sue, so it is beginning.
So my studio in Manhattan was vandalized in one of the nights of looting. So I think I could actually be a lead plaintiff. Other people may have more damages than me, but if I want to be the lead, I probably could. And it turns out that Bill de Blasio's daughter was arrested a few blocks away the same night for looting and rioting. So maybe I could bring her into it.
I think that would make a great lawsuit with you as the named plaintiff and DeVazio as a named defendant. And even though your damages may not be very great, I assume there were many, many others similar small businessmen such as yourself who also
They might wanna
likewise suffered
join.
damages.
Right.
So under a class action, that attorney, the one who gets in there first, frequently will get to represent everybody.
That's right.
So
All
sure,
right.
he's not going to want to take your little $10,000 case.
Hey,
but
hey,
if you've got
hey,
hundreds
hey,
of
Doc.
people, he will.
No, John. I'm suffering. I have pain. I have pain and suffering. It's not just material. I have other pains. I'll talk to you soon. We got to run. That's John Banzhaf. He's a nationally known public interest attorney and professor at George Washington Law. Thank you, Professor. Quick break. More Liquid Lunch right after this.